Hello everyone, this is Sahil and welcome back to my channel. This is actually the first time I'm showing my face on YouTube, so I hope you like it. Anyways, I'm doing this because I've decided to put a little bit more efforts into making these videos. Prior to this, I was just filming, saying whatever was in my mind and uploading it on YouTube raw without any editing whatsoever. But this time round, I actually did a bit more research, came up with the facts and the figures. I actually have a script ready and I'm gonna do some editing. So do let me know in the comments below what do you think about it. And let's get on with the watches. If you guys have not already noticed, the type of watches that I'm attracted to are the underrated vintage timepieces. These watches are part of the history. They have a story to tell, but yet often overlooked. Which is not a bad thing because I can pick them up at an amazing price. And also part of making these videos is to bring out this passion for such timepieces to people with similar taste. So without further ado, let's bring out the watch I have for you guys today. It's none other than the watch from the land of Japan, King Seiko 4402-8000. I did a really quick unboxing video for this watch, link to which is down below in the description. Do check it out. In this three-part video though, I'm gonna cover firstly the history of King Seiko and a little bit about Grand Seiko. These two brands go hand in hand, so I can't really talk about one without the other. Secondly, I'm going to give you an in-depth review about this watch, what I think about it after 3 months of use. And lastly, we'll talk about how I got my hands on it and things to look for while buying such a piece or this particular timepiece. So for now, let's get down to the history lesson. So the 44ks, where KS stands for King Seiko, are the second generation King Seiko watches in terms of design, and in my opinion they are the most important one as well. To understand why, let's go back to 1959 when Seiko separated its two factories, the Suwa Seikosha factory and the Daini Seikosha factory, into different entities. By doing so, Seiko hoped to develop a friendly competition and independent innovation within the company. And for the same, the King Seiko line represented the Daini division, whereas the Grand Seiko represented the Suwa division. Both King Seiko and Grand Seiko were there with just one goal: to be the Swiss in their own game. There were no fancy complication, no fancy materials, just one thing: mastering timekeeping. Were they able to achieve this though? Well, let's find out. King Seiko came up with this first watch in 1961, although it's fair to say that it somewhat lagged what Grand Seiko had to offer with its 3180. It lagged in its design flair and the execution of its exterior elements. This is also reflected in how Seiko priced these watches, where King Seiko was only priced a little bit more than half of what Grand Seiko was selling at. However, King Seiko wasn't done with the fight. To take the design game to another level, they for the first time in Seiko's history went on to hire a design graduate. One of these hired design graduates was the famous Taro Tanaka. In a matter of years, Taro Tanaka would go on to influence the next decade of not just King Seiko's design, but the whole of Seiko's design language, including Grand Seiko. Tanaka chose a holistic approach towards design, where all the departments in the company would work in one motion towards a single design. In 1962, he came up with a series of rules which he called the grammar of design, and they were: firstly, all surfaces and angles of the case, dial, hands and indices had to be flat and geometrically perfect to best reflect light. Secondly, bezels were to be simple two-dimensional faceted curves. Thirdly, no visual distortion was to be tolerated from any angle, and all cases should be mirror finished. Lastly, all cases must be unique for each reference with no generic round case designs. The first watch to ever reflect the grammar of design was none other than the 44ks. The 44ks came in two variants. Firstly, the 44-9990, and secondly, what I have over here, the 4402-8000. The key difference between the two is the date function and also the case size. In 1964, Daini and Suwa Seiko took part in the New Shuttle Astronomical Observatory tests. These observatory tests were far more strict than the regular chronometer tests, and it was a disaster. Suwa placed 144th and Daini placed 153rd. In 1967, Seiko returned to the New Shuttle Observatory trials, and the changes made to their movements were dramatic. Daini placed 4th, 5th, 7th and 8th, whereas Suwa placed 12th. The following year, Suwa submitted their movements again for the trials, but the competitions were suspended. They later found out that their watches placed 2nd and from 4th to 8th place. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the competitions were cancelled after the Swiss found out their ass beaten for the 2nd time. Seiko also submitted their movements to the Geneva Observatory trials, and their mechanical movements placed 4th to the 10th place, with the 1st, 2nd and 3rd place going to quartz watches. This is just amazing, and it also answers the question we asked earlier. Seiko did beat the Swiss in their own game at their own backyard with the most accurate mechanical movement ever. However, the quartz watches came in the picture, and the crisis, as many would say, and blame Seiko for, it killed the mechanical watches. King Seiko and Grand Seiko were one of the fatalities which got discontinued in the late 1970s. In 1998, the Grand Seiko branding was revived though, but not the King Seiko, and we may never ever see another new watch under the King Seiko branding. So with that, we have come to the end of this particular video. To some, it might be a little bit boring, but to me, knowing the history helps me appreciate my watches a little bit more. And so if you guys have similar tastes, why don't go and hit the like button and subscribe for the next upcoming videos in the same series. In the next video, I'll be covering the in-depth review of this particular watch, and until then, ciao.